My first question is, why do relationship conflicts, as opposed to task or process conflicts, potentially lead to the most dysfunctional and harmful outcomes? Explain your answer. For my response, I put, relationship conflicts mostly lead to the most dysfunctional and harmful outcomes because the personalities in these conflicts are the core parts of people. The core parts of people don't want to change their way of thinking and are often stuck in their known methodologies. For example, someone who is orderly in everything may clash with someone who is unorganized because these two don't want to change their way of thinking. The orderly person doesn't want to be loose, and the unorderly person doesn't want to be tight on a schedule. The more deep a conflict is between people, the more likely there is for a dysfunctional and harmful outcome. A task conflict isn't super deep because the direction, content, or goal is flexible. People can easily adjust to others if they need to complete the assignment at a certain time or want to change something about the assignment. For example, an introvert can adjust to making an assignment more verbal because they understand others are better at talking for an assignment. The introvert likely wouldn't have to change their work and likely could still find work in the assignment he or she was comfortable to do and wanted to do. Someone isn't challenged much personally in task conflict. Someone also isn't challenged much personally in process conflict because people can still not fully change to someone else's ideas. For example, someone could think the work should be carried out in terms of importance, whereas another person could think the work should be assigned by management. Likely, these two could collaborate, understand each other's preferences, and compromise. With personalities alone, there isn't as much room for repairing a situation because it is the core of someone. You can move around the core part of someone in task conflict. You can move around the core part of someone in task conflict and process conflict, but not in relationship conflict because that's the core part of someone. In task and process conflict, you can avoid the full-on blunt of a direct personality because you can compromise easier and avoid directness. My second question is, of the 5 conflict management strategies, which do you believe are most likely to occur in a conflict between 2 unequal parties, a manager and employee, a board of directors and CEO, or a large company and a small supplier? Which do you believe are most likely to occur in a conflict between 2 equal parties, similarly sized companies, team members, or department heads? Explain your reasoning. Of the 5 conflict management strategies, I think accommodation is most likely to occur in a conflict between 2 unequal parties because people typically want to please their boss and usually don't go to the level of avoidance. People don't choose avoidance normally because avoidance requires loosening boundaries completely and not speaking your mind at all. Accommodation is more realistic between 2 unequal parties because people still want to portray their ideas, but will frequently pull their viewpoints down in front of a boss. People don't want to make their boss angry and usually will adjust their viewpoints to not upset their boss. Competition isn't likely between 2 unequal parties because the superior party will not feel like they need to compete against a lower level party, and the inferior party won't want to compete against the superior party because they don't want to upset their superiors. Compromise is reasonably possible between 2 unequal parties, but is still more unlikely to occur than accommodation. The superior party may concede something in order to keep up for the inferior party, and the inferior party may concede something to appease their superiors. However, because there is a lack of power balance, usually the superior party won't concede to the inferior party. Collaboration is likely to happen between both parties because each side wants harmony and would prefer to have all the problems fixed. I just don't think collaboration is more likely to happen than accommodation with two unequal parties because there is a lack of power balance. Yes, the inferior party will try to appease the superior party, but the superior party won't reciprocate the same amount of effort as the inferior party. The inferior party will put more effort into helping the superior party because they are in a weaker position and will get fired much easier if they don't try to appease. Accommodation is spot on here because it only makes sense for one party, whereas collaboration should make sense for both parties but doesn't. Between two equal parties, I think compromise is most likely to occur because there is a balance of power and of the fact these parties can concede something each of objective equal value. Without balance, the larger side might feel as if the smaller party is giving up too little in exchange, whereas the smaller party might feel as if they are giving up a lot in exchange because they are smaller. With equal power, there should be no feelings of disdain for the other side, because it should be easy to find an objectively fair solution. There's less room for disagreement. Because of specialization, parties will want to trade and exchange with other parties because generally a specific party produces their goods or services at a cheaper and more effective rate. I don't think avoidance is likely to happen between two equal parties because each party doesn't have a reason to suppress important issues. I don't think accommodation is likely because, once again, the parties are balanced. Competition could happen between two equal parties, but probably won't because in business, everyone can win in trade. Not everyone has to lose. Collaboration is likely to happen between two equal parties, but I think compromise is more likely because equal trading happens more in giving something up instead of just trying to find a solution that's beneficial for everyone involved. The third question is, consider a time that you managed conflict through avoidance. What did you actually avoid by putting off and waiting to deal with the conflict? Did avoidance make the conflict better? Why or why not? What types of conflict situations are best addressed through avoidance? Explain your answer. So one time I managed conflict through avoidance by avoiding a coworker who was disrespectful. This coworker had me hold a sauce bottle for him while he was unloading it and just walked away, and also had me stay far past my shift just because he wanted to get home earlier. He even said that out loud. What I was actually avoiding was confronting the coworker about this issue. I was actually about to be petty and ignore this coworker every 2 times he called my name. But the first thing the next week he said, "What's up?" and gave me a fist bump. He seemed to informally apologize, so we were good. Avoidance made the conflict better here just because the coworker informally apologized later. which is kind of rare, but it can happen. You can identify it too. The best types of conflict situations that are best addressed through avoidance include ones where a future apology is likely, where someone higher up will objectively check the situation soon, and where a lawsuit will or might be involved. A future apology is good for avoidance because then both people get to avoid an awkward confrontation, which is why I wasn't wanting to confront the person in the first place. Just wanting to avoid it until I had to. Someone else higher up objectively checking on the situation is good for avoidance because then you yourself get to avoid the awkward confrontation while the aggravating person that still has to be in a confrontation. And you also get the added bonus that they might not listen to you, but they will listen to management. A lawsuit being involved is good for avoidance because you want to legally have yourself avoid saying anything that could hurt you in court. This is very broad. You just don't want to say anything that could mess up your reputation, put you at any fault, save your position, but doing all this ethically, of course, not like lying, just like telling the truth, and not like getting yourself framed for something you didn't do, like being honest. I'd say though, another time I did avoidance in the workplace was someone so for the sink in the back, someone like messed up and like they put the container, the clock system like backwards. I didn't say anything. I just avoided the situation. And then eventually my manager found. He told the person, and that whole thing went away. But that wasn't really such a problem there. And I mean, that time it worked out pretty well too. I mean, normally avoidance doesn't work out well because usually it's a lose-lose situation as discussed in the textbook, but it did for both of those times. Yeah. Let me move on to the last question. The last question is, discuss the integrative bargaining strategies used in the case negotiation discussed in the previous section. Which of the four strategies, separate the people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, generate a variety of possibilities, insist on some fair standard, in the parentheses were used. So essentially, what bargaining strategies were used in the previous section. And this is about the NFLPA case, which I already know about. So this was pretty easy for me. So anyways, so the response I put is the integrative bargaining strategies used in the case negotiation include separating the people from the problem, focusing on the interest, not positions, and insisting on some fair standard. The NFLPA used separating the people from the problem by showcasing the dangers of the sport and longevity issues of NFL players. NFL players historically have, besides kickers and punters, have all gotten CT and had brain issues later in life, which is pretty sad. These players probably won't get a career as long as others in most jobs. Well, they definitely won most jobs, but their careers in total are going to be likely shorter because of the injuries and brain problems. And they deserve a higher salary for the risk. The NFLPA used focusing on the interest, not positions, from the organization, showing the physical and mental effects the game has taken on the players. Instead of just focusing on the most known physical positions, the organization chose to include all positions to show this is a football problem overall for everyone. That turns everyone in the game, instead of just a few positions like linebacker, running back, where it's like very physical like all the time. Lastly, the NFLPA used insisting on some fair standard because players weren't being treated objectively for similar issues and injuries. The NFLPA wanted to make a system where objectively everyone would be treated the same and everything would be fair in measurement. Thank you for listening, and that's my lesson 11 assignment.